The annual Thompson family Christmas dinner was exactly as I remembered it. Mother's antique china, father's expensive wine, and enough passive-aggressive comments to fill a self-help book. I adjusted my second-hand blazer, a designer piece I'd found at a thrift store, and took my seat at the massive oak table. "Well, look who finally made it," my sister Victoria drawled, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she raised her wine glass. "We were beginning to think you couldn't afford the gas to drive here." My brother Alexander, seated next to his third wife, chuckled. "Come now, Victoria. I'm sure Rachel's, what are you calling it these days? Your financial consulting business? I'm sure it's doing just fine." I smiled, helping myself to the roast duck. "Actually, it's private equity and asset management now. Is that what they're calling penny pinching these days?" Victoria smirked. "Tell me, dear sister, are you still living in that tiny apartment downtown?" Mother sighed dramatically. "Rachel, darling, you know your father and I would be happy to help you with a down payment. There's no shame in accepting family support." I thought about the briefcase sitting next to my chair and took a slow sip of wine. "That's kind of you, Mother, but I'm doing just fine." "Fine?" Alexander scoffed. "Rachel, you drive a 10-year-old Toyota. Meanwhile, Victoria just bought that lovely mansion in Cedar Hills, and I just closed on my summer house in the Hamptons." Victoria preened. "The Cedar Hills property is quite an investment. 5 bedrooms, pool, tennis court, everything a proper home should have. But of course you wouldn't know about real estate investments, would you, Rachel?" Our father, unusually quiet, studied me over his wine glass. He'd always been the shrewdest of the family, and something in my demeanor must have caught his attention. "Speaking of investments," Alexander continued, "you should see my portfolio this year. The merger at Thompson Global went through, and our profits are through the roof." "That's wonderful," I said, cutting my duck with precise movements. "How's the financing on that?" Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't bore us with talk of financing. It's all handled by the family office anyway. We can't all be obsessed with counting pennies like you, dear sister." "The family office?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the one that father had to refinance last month?" The table went silent. Father's hand paused halfway to his wine glass. "How did you know about that?" Alexander demanded. I reached for my briefcase. "It's funny you should ask. You see, I've been quite interested in family finances lately." "Rachel," father's voice held a warning note. He was starting to understand. "Especially," I continued, pulling out a folder, "the rather creative accounting at Thompson Global. And the leveraged buyouts. And of course the mortgages." Victoria's perfectly manicured hand clenched around her fork. "What are you talking about? Would you like to know what I've been doing with all those pennies I've been counting?" I asked, opening the folder. "It's quite an interesting story, actually. It starts about 5 years ago when you both laughed me out of the family office for suggesting we diversify our investments." The sound of a wine glass shattering broke the tension. Alexander's new wife had dropped hers, but nobody moved to clean it up. All eyes were on the papers I was now spreading across the table. "Rachel," father said quietly, "what have you done?" I smiled, selecting one document in particular, the deed to Victoria's precious Cedar Hills mansion. "What I've done, dear family, is become your bank." "What do you mean, our bank?" Victoria's voice had lost its usual smugness. I laid out the documents one by one, like dealing cards in a high-stakes poker game. "While you were all busy buying mansions and summer homes, I was building something rather different. My penny-pinching company now specializes in acquiring distressed assets and high-risk debt." Alexander grabbed one of the papers, his face paling. This is my mortgage. All 3 of them, actually," I corrected. "The Hamptons house, your penthouse, and that lovely ski lodge in Aspen. I bought them last month when your bank was looking to offload some risky debt." Victoria's hands were shaking as she reached for another document. "This isn't possible. You couldn't afford to buy your mortgage?" I finished for her. "The one you refinanced 3 times to maintain your proper lifestyle?" It was surprisingly affordable, actually. Banks get nervous when they see multiple refinancing and irregular payment patterns. Father stood up slowly, his businessman's mind already calculating the implications. "The family office refinancing. That was you too?" I nodded, pulling out another folder. When I heard Thompson Global was overleveraged, I started buying up corporate debt through shell companies. The family office's loans were practically a bonus package. But you couldn't. Alexander sputtered. You were always terrible with money. All those second-hand clothes, that cheap apartment. Oh, Alex, I sighed. You never did understand the difference between being bad with money and being careful with it. While you were spending, I was investing. While you were borrowing, I was lending. And while you were mocking my thrift store shopping, I was building an empire. Mother's voice quavered. Rachel dear, surely you wouldn't do anything drastic. We're family. Family. I raised an eyebrow. Like when Victoria told everyone at her country club that I was the family charity case. Or when Alexander suggested I become his secretary since I couldn't handle real business. I pulled out my phone, showing them my company's portfolio, billions in managed assets, strategic investments and acquired debt. Their debt. Your mortgages are just the beginning, I continued. I own controlling interests in most of your independent business ventures. Those loans you took out thinking they were from different banks. All mine through various subsidiaries. Victoria's mascara was starting to run. But the Cedar Hills house is 3 months behind on payments, I finished. As is Alexander's Hamptons property. And the family office hasn't made its last 2 payments either. Father sank back into his chair. Why now? Why tell us at Christmas dinner? I picked up my wine glass, savoring the moment. Because 5 years ago at this very dinner, you all laughed when I said I was starting my own investment firm. Victoria, you said I'd die poor. Alexander, you bet I'd come crawling back within 6 months. My phone buzzed, another bank offering to sell me distressed assets. The irony wasn't lost on me. So what happens now? Alexander whispered. What happens now? I said, reaching for my final folder, depends entirely on how the next hour goes. The Christmas tree lights twinkled mockingly in the corner as I laid out my terms. The sterling silver candlesticks that Mother was so proud of cast long shadows across the documents, restructuring agreements, payment plans, and ownership transfers. You're not serious, Alexander choked out. This would put us all under your control. Under my supervision, I corrected. There's a difference. Though given your track record with financial management, control might not be a bad thing. Victoria dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed napkin. But my social standing, my reputation, will remain intact, I assured her, as long as you start making smart decisions. Starting with selling that tennis court you never used to cover your mortgage payments. Father cleared his throat. You've thought of everything, haven't it? I learned from the best, I smiled at him. Remember what you always said. In business, never let them see you coming. I just took it a step further than you expected. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my real office, a sleek penthouse suite downtown. The apartment they'd mocked was just for show, a calculated move to keep them underestimating me. The terms are simple, I continued. You all keep your homes and businesses but under my company's oversight. No more vanity purchases, no more risky investments, no more living beyond your means. And if we refuse? Alexander challenged, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. I started gathering the documents. Then on January 1st, my company begins foreclosure proceedings. All of them. Simultaneously. Mother gasped. You wouldn't. The same way you wouldn't tell your bridge club I was barely making ends meet? I asked quietly. The same way Victoria wouldn't tell her country club friends I was one step above a street beggar? The room fell silent except for the gentle clink of ice in crystal glasses. I'll need your decisions by midnight, I said, checking my watch. The papers are drawn up, ready for signatures. And before you consider trying to find alternative financing. I smiled. I should mention that my company has already contacted every major bank in the region. No one will touch your loans without my approval. Father was the first to reach for a pen. He'd always known when he was beaten. You learned more than just business from me, didn't you? I learned from all of you, I replied. Victoria taught me the value of appearances, which is why I maintained mine so carefully. Alexander showed me the power of leverage by taking on far too much of it. And Mother. I turned to her. You taught me that family and business are always intertwined whether we like it or not. One by one they signed the papers. With each signature, years of condescension, mockery, and dismissal were transformed into legal obligations. As I packed up my briefcase, Victoria spoke up, her voice small. Will you be at New Year's dinner? Of course, I said, standing. After all, I'll need to review everyone's quarterly financial reports. Oh, and Victoria? That Bentley you ordered? I cancelled it this morning. Consider it your first lesson in fiscal responsibility. Walking out to my cheap Toyota, which ironically was one of the few assets in the family not underwater, I couldn't help but smile. They'd spent years building a facade of wealth while I built actual wealth. They'd mocked my frugality while drowning in debt. They'd dismissed my business acumen while becoming, unknowingly, my biggest investment. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from my real estate agent about a mansion for sale. Not in Cedar Hills, but close enough to remind Victoria about her new financial reality every time she drove past. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's becoming the person who controls the success of those who doubted you.